China is celebrating its National Day just weeks ahead of a once-in-a-decade handover of power within the ruling Communist Party. Live pictures now. The process will start on the 8th of November, but Monday's festivities are also taking place against the backdrop of a scandal that has brought down a powerful politician. There are also tensions, as you know, with Japan over disputed islands in the East China Sea. Divya Gopalan is in Hong Kong for us. Divya, good to see you. What is scheduled? What's the agenda for today?
Tony, it's the agenda that's been on the table every year since 1949. That was when Mao Zedong declared the People's Republic of China and inaugurated it, and the Communist Party came into power. There's going to be a procession. There was a procession at dawn. A marching band with the People's Armed Police, and later in the day, the outgoing president Hu Jintao, the current and outgoing premier Wen Jiabao, and the future president Xi Jinping will lay a wreath in the People's Heroes Monument. That monument is also in Tiananmen Square, and it was erected to honor the people that had fought for the revolution that eventually led to the coming in of the Communist Party. Now, there'll be no speeches today, although there were speeches on Saturday when the Premier Wen Jiabao had said that China was ushering a new era. They were going to build on previous achievements and push forward with development, all very positives. But he also mentioned that China is facing a period of opening up, and much development is still needed.
Well, Divya, you mentioned the leaders. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about the leaders. What's ahead for them?
Oh, Tony, this is a crucial period for China. There's a big leadership change. It happens once every decade. They announced the date for November 8th. Now, the reason that this is particularly going to be looked at is because China has had a period of somewhat instability. The economy has been moving in different directions. It's shown a certain amount of a lack of coherence within the Communist Party that people outside have picked up on, and that came up in particular with Bo Xilai. He was a rising star in the Chinese Communist Party, was supposed to be a big star in this year's leadership change. He has now been kicked out because of scandals that are very public and embarrassing for the Chinese government. So ahead of this, the Chinese government have a lot to face. They have to show a united front, and they also have to deal with the Japanese and Chinese island dispute, as you mentioned earlier. The two countries claim territory over those disputed, what the Chinese call Diaoyu Islands and the Japanese called Senkaku Islands, and that still hasn't been resolved. And to China's embarrassment, the run-up to that were protests to begin with that turned very violent, which showed a very embarrassing face to the rest of the world for China.
Yeah, boy, much to talk about. Divya, good to see you. Divya Gopalan for us in Hong Kong. And joining me now from Beijing is Willem Van Kemenade. He is a China analyst and an author. Willem, good to talk to you. Let's look back a bit before we move forward. This year's China National Day. The leadership transition is really upon us. When you look back on the last decade, is sort of China's amazing economic expansion, particularly from 2003 to 2011, is that the thing that really stands out the most?
Well, the spectacular economic development is contrasted by the lack of political development. The talk has been about political reform, liberalization, if you wish, but almost nothing of that has happened. China is still a dictatorship without a dictator, because the president is a rather colorless, imageless figure. It's 9 men in the standing committee of the Politburo that call the shots. And in terms of political development, the legal system is even more opaque than it was before, as the two recent political trials against the wife of Bo Xilai, Gu Kailai, and his police chief, Wang Lijun, have highlighted.
Well, I'm curious, picking up on that point, moving forward, how seriously is China to be taken, in your view, on the issues of reform, political reform, attention to human rights moving forward, equality under law?
Well, the current president Hu Jintao, has defined China's political agenda as being dominated by harmony and unity, rejecting Western-style democracy as being divisive, disuniting, sapping the strength of the country, and China won't have anything of that. And well, human rights, they have improved to some extent, but dissidents have still been meted out stiff sentences repeatedly, and well, freedom of the press,
right,
in terms of free newspapers, is still non-existent, but there is considerable freedom of expression through the internet and the blogosphere, etc. So there is some movement, but real liberalization, no.
Okay, so
it is something that has to be awaited.
Sure. So one more for you. What's your outlook for China in the area of foreign affairs? Now, the premier yesterday, on Saturday, said China will pursue an independent foreign policy of peace and firmly safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. If the party remains true to those words, and there's no reason to think the party won't, what does that portend, in your view, for the controversy over the disputed islands in the East China Sea?
The main slogan in foreign policy from around 2003 to 2008, the Olympics year, has been China's peaceful rise. But not very much consistency has been shown in that. In 2010, a first major incident erupted in the East China Sea over these tiny islets, the Senkakus in Japanese, the Diaoyu in Chinese. And ever since, tension has risen not only in the East China Sea, but particularly in the South China Sea, where China has increasingly tense relationships with both the Philippines and Vietnam over several archipelagos in the vast South China Sea. In the East China Sea, the historical position of China is, in my view, stronger than that of Japan, but in the South China Sea, where China has claims based on thousand-year-old maps of the Sung dynasty, saying, look, it's ours because we mapped it already 1,000 years ago. Well, these other countries in Southeast Asia didn't exist at that time. So China has a kind of hegemonic logic here that is unacceptable not only to Southeast Asia, but to the world at large.
And Willem, as you've been speaking, we've been watching these pictures of the ceremony ongoing right now, China marking 63 years since the founding of the People's Republic. And as we've been discussing with Willem Van Kemenade, it is against a backdrop of political scandal and a territorial dispute. Willem, it's good to talk to you. Thank you for your time.